what quitting marijuana did for me emotionally. So the first thing is it allowed me to stay calm and relaxed under pressure. And that one didn't come right away. So that is not one to expect in the first week, probably month. You might have moments in the first month. Um, Consistently, though, it took a while. And what I mean by this is where, when I was smoking weed, it was like, okay, obviously I could feel more calm. So I thought. And at first, it did work like that. However, as time went on and the weed stopped working, I stopped being calm when I was smoking. I would get very paranoid. I'd get anxious. I would feel a ton of unpleasant emotion. And it was really confusing at first because I'm like, okay, weed used to be this thing that made me chill out and vibe. And now I'm like paranoid. Like, what the heck? And so basically, what I realized was I got to a point where weed got me to a baseline of calmness that I was not receiving when before that because I just had never smoked weed before. I could not go past that though on a regular basis anymore because I was no longer able to process weed and use it in the same way because I just built up a tolerance to it. So what happened was after I quit and I learned how to be sober is that I'm able to be calm like almost on choice. Like sure I feel anxiety but I'm not like triggered by it as much. Or sometimes even at all. It's almost just like it's just there. And I've learned how to in a ignore it, but not in the way that I'm like suppressing it, that I'm in the way that I'm feeling it and I'm allowing it to like kind of do its thing. But mentally, I'm strong enough to where I'm not reacting to it basically. And that's been really nice because I can kind of go out, I can have conversations with people, which is a huge thing. And now that I've quit weed, I can actually have long lasting functional relationships, which is really nice. I'm not crawling out of my skin. I'm not kind of tweaking out anymore, and very calm. And I know how to tap into like my breathing and my breath and stuff, which is very important as well from what I've learned. And I can be a lot more calm and centered in social situations, especially. Maybe some of you are out there quitting and it's kind of overwhelming to even think about just like going to the grocery store. I remember I was there at one point too. I didn't want to be surrounded by people. I didn't want to be in a public place. And as I continued to go out there and practice, I realized that, okay, I can always be my own center point of origin. I don't need other people. I don't need a situation to be going a certain way. I can just be who I am and be fine. I'm not going to die. The world isn't going to end. I'm going to be okay. So that was a huge plus of quitting marijuana and learning how to be more calm and centered, kind of overcoming that anxiety on my own. So some practical ways to do that, because that might have piqued your interest: meditation, eating proper, taking really good care of yourself, exercise, right? Getting all the anxiety out in the gym. Or maybe in the streets if you go running. That's a really good avenue to channel that anxiety where you can kind of be stressed and anxious because obviously you're exercising, you're putting your body under stress. So then when you do go out into the public and you're interacting with people, you can be a lot more calm. So the next thing that happened internally, which in turn yielded results in the outside, was having better relationships. So this was a huge one. And this was the person that originally asked the question. They're asking how quitting alcohol actually helped with my relationships and stuff and going out in the real world and stuff. And weed was a similar thing. So I had good relationships when I first started. Like I said, it was powerful, it was fun, it was exciting. And then once it stopped working, that's when I became more of the recluse. I started to not want to be around people. The paranoia came up, all that stuff I just talked about. And I didn't want to go and socialize. And in fact, the only people that I would allow myself to socialize with were other people who had weed. So it wasn't very strong relationships, you could say. And a huge motivator for me to quit was to have great relationships. And this is really important when quitting, is to have those reasons why that you're putting down the substance, because I know quitting just to quit, and I've done that before. Like, I'm gonna quit weed to quit weed. That was like the sole motivator. That was not a fun reason to quit weed. Let me tell you. Because there was no external drive besides just to quit weed, it was pretty much I was just white knuckling it the whole time. As soon as I started to as soon as I started to identify what do I really want out of this life in terms of, career, relationships, longevity, whatever it may be, that's really when I started to kind of start that's really when my mind started to shift a little bit and I started to see the bigger picture. It wasn't so much about just quitting weed. I knew that was the first step to reach all these other goals. However, I did need to quit weed. And one of those big motivators was to have great relationships at some point. Now, there was a lot of uncertainty because I didn't know if I was going to be able to have great relationships. I was nervous. I had a ton of anxiety, like I said before. I was not sure who I was. I didn't have a career going for myself. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long road. And it was. It's been a long climb up a very steep mountain. However, as they say, you just take one foot, one step at a time. And once you get to a certain point of the mountain, it doesn't really make sense to go back down anymore. So that's kind of what it was for me. I'm like, okay, I've been at this for a while. I could go back, but that would kind of waste the last like year of my life. And I've already wasted a lot of my life smoking weed. So I'm not doing that anymore. And I didn't know if I was going to get to have relationships. So there was a lot of faith involved. I took things one day at a time. I got help. I got support. I got people that I could trust and teach me how to have relationships because I didn't really know how. I just knew how to get things for myself and be kind of selfish. I didn't know how to give in a relationship or what that even meant. And that was a big, big problem. So once I learned those skills, that's when I started to be able to develop over time awesome relationships that I can enter and feel proud of, that I can enjoy, that I'm not dependent on for my well-being, but that I get to enjoy as a like reward or treat, maybe to say the least. It's a gift. It's not so much like this is my life and soul, because that's how I treated relationships before, almost like another drug. And I've had moments like that even in sobriety, and you guys can probably guess how that's worked. Now, when I talk about relationships, I don't just mean friendships or family. Those all got better, which was huge. The ones that really drove me, if we're being frank here, being able to turn up for romantic relationships has been awesome. I can tell you a big reason I became so addicted to weed and other substances and turned to the bottle or whatever you have is because I didn't have the skills to have romantic relationships. It's not something I learned growing up. And the only way I learned kind of sexuality was unfortunately through stuff like porn and stuff. And I grew up in a Catholic background, so I had a lot of guilt and shame around sexuality, period. Now, that's not an excuse, or I'm not blaming the systems. I didn't have a say in it. My parents thought they were doing what was best. I see now, though, that there was some big problems with it. And I really had to set out on a quest to learn how to date, how to talk to people I'm interested in, and how not to just wait for some magical unicorn to come riding up and change my life. I had to be proactive in my dating desires and excursions. Getting to date has been a huge blessing, and it's something that has been quite the journey. And I know I wouldn't have the emotional availability or the courage to have gotten out there and started talking to women if I had not quit marijuana. The anxiety, the pain, the social anxiety, the paranoia, all that stuff was all limiting me from being able to be emotionally available. That can be a trigger word in these days, emotionally available. And it really is true, though. I wasn't able to be present in a relationship. I wasn't able to show up and be a giver. I was always a taker, right? And who wants to be around a taker? So now that I know how to give and know how to show up and be my best self and give my energy and be of service in whatever the situation calls for, then the other person, as I'm learning to attract healthier people as well, which has also been a process, that I can attract people that are also in that giving spirit, and together we can develop strong relationships because we both have a giving heart. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I've definitely dated people that don't have that giving spirit, and it's been a lesson of pain. And now that I'm learning and growing and getting more experience, I can kind of start to pick out pretty quickly like who's in that realm of showing up to give and not just to take. The last one I'm going to throw in here is depression has gone away, which was huge. I spent a lot of time in therapy trying to figure out why I was depressed. I thought it was like my identity. I didn't know how to be happy. And well, lo and behold, I was smoking weed all the time. So my dopamine and serotonin and neuroleprin and all those chemicals that naturally produce feelings of pleasure were just absolutely squashed from the weed and from just zapping it from all the hits I was taking. So that was a huge revelation. Today, I don't really have depression. I'll feel bouts of sadness or maybe throughout the day, just moments of kind of lethargy. However, they come and go very quickly, and then I can feel good again. I will say I was just very sick the last week, so I didn't have much pleasure, you could say. However, that's par for the course of being sick. So on a day-to-day basis, I do feel quite good. And that's something to look forward to when you quit marijuana, is that as you work on yourself and you become a healthier person and you find what you're supposed to do in this world over time, and of course, most importantly, staying away from marijuana, mental health does start to resolve itself in a lot of those things that maybe psychoactive medications were sought out for before, or antidepressants, anti-anxiety. I used to take all those and I don't anymore. I don't need to. And in fact, I found that when I was taking them, they helped at first, and then I would get even more depressed, because to really understand one's emotions, they must be felt fully. That's what I believe, and for myself. So if I'm not able to feel the full range of my emotions, I can never resolve, especially the painful ones. So antidepressants are very good when one's in a very low spot. When I was really in a dark place, they helped me kind of, peek my head above the clouds a little bit. However, as I was starting to see more of the sky, I realized that, okay, if I want to keep, experiencing more and climbing higher, I had to learn how to face some of the painful emotions that I was not able to at the time I started taking antidepressants. And once I started facing those emotions, I was able to heal them in a sense, kind of get them out of my body, and then be able to move forward with the new freedom in a sense. So think about this: when you're happy, you allow yourself to be happy. You're not like, oh man, I'm feeling happy, I can't feel this, suppress. When you think back, then it might be hard to remember some of those good times like really strongly, right? Why is that? Because you allowed that a whole range of emotional experience to pass through you. You didn't suppress it. You didn't say, okay, I'm going to push this down. You said, okay, yeah, I'm going to feel happy because I like feeling happy. Now, when you think of a painful experience, like a traumatic experience, imagine it can be very still vivid up here. Like you can almost remember it to like the movement or the minute details. And why that is because in those situations, for a lot of people, and I did this very many times, is I suppress the emotion. And this isn't like a bad thing. It's like a human survival technique, especially if something's really intense. Our brains, our psyches kind of shut that off so we don't like go crazy. And I've had to do that many times because of a lot of trauma experience. So in a sense, I was never able to fully feel that emotion and let it ride through my system. And then it kind of kept playing out in different weird, odd ways in my adulthood. And as I was getting older, you know how it goes. So once I was able to start feeling all that pain I had suppressed, not as like a shame on me for suppressing it, as just my natural human defense coping mechanism. As soon as the universe gave me the permission to start, as soon as I started giving myself permission to address that, it started to resolve. And those memories aren't vivid anymore because they have worked their way out of my memory bank. So it's really nice. And it can happen for you too once you start feeling those emotions. So guys, this was a great one to make. If you are looking for some help in quitting marijuana and you're ready to quit fast and for good, then schedule a call with me down below. You can hop on a call with me for 40 minutes and we can dive into where you are and how we can start getting you off marijuana as fast as possible. And most importantly, how you can start getting off marijuana as fast as possible. Again, this is going to be your process. I am just here to facilitate and be an accountability for you as you really dive into this quest to find freedom from whatever the affliction is holding you back from. So subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you coming through the channel to talk about marijuana content with me, and we'll talk to you very soon. Adios.